Challenge. Let's quickly wait for the others to quickly join in, and then inshallah we will begin. हाँ जी हादिया बच्चे, are we good so far? समझ में आ रही है?
Yes, sir.
चलिए अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह, that is great. चलिए जी. So I think let's resume. The others will join in inshallah. बल्कि आ गए हैं सारे. Okay. All right. So now we are going to talk about the plant cell. अच्छा मैं एक मिनट से पहले तो नहीं शुरू करा ना? I think that's injustice. नहीं, I think it's more than a minute. Okay. सबको inshallah everybody will be tuned in. मेरे बच्चों को routine का idea हो जाता है since it's the first and the second lesson. So usually. Okay. So this is a typical plant cell. We need to understand that there are three basic differences between the animal cell and the plant cell. So the things that I'm going to highlight here: chloroplast, vacuole, and the cell wall. These are the things that are specific to the plant cells. You will not find them in the animal cells. Okay, I'm sure you already know this, but again, generally, let's look at all of the other labels. So we have the cytoplasm, we have the nucleus. Just ignore the nucleolus, it's the middle part of the nucleus. You don't need to go into that detail. Then, of course, you have the cell membrane, and then you have the cell wall, which you can see is slightly thicker. So now what we're going to talk about is some basic points with regards to all of these three additional features of the plant cells. So let's begin with the chloroplast. That's very important. I'm going to use the left side to talk about chloroplasts. Okay. All right. So chloroplast number one is an organelle in leaf cells. So this is specific to leaf cells. Very important. Okay. If I only write this is an organelle in the leaf, that's incorrect. Leaf ki kaun si jagah pe? It's actually the cells of the leaf that we're talking about. Okay. And then we will say that it contains green pigment. Contains green pigment. Who will tell me the name of the pigment quickly? Called chlorophyll. Shabash, chlorophyll. Okay. So chlorophyll, okay. And one thing that we need to know about the chlorophyll molecule, that chlorophyll molecule, this molecule contains a very important element called magnesium. Okay, so magnesium is an integral part of this particular organelle. Okay, all right. So and then the basic thing, by the way, there have been instances in the past papers where you're supposed to tell the difference between the chloroplast and the chlorophyll. Remember that the chloroplast is the organelle, whereas the chlorophyll is the chemical which is present inside the organelle. Okay, so this distinction is very important. Niaz, I think you joined slightly late. Inshallah, you will get used to my 1 minute breaks. I get very specific with the length of my break. You haven't missed much. We're just starting off with what chloroplast is. Okay, we're looking at plant cells. Okay, so the next thing that we need to understand about chloroplast is that it traps light energy. This is a very important point. Therefore, I'm writing it with a different color. It traps light energy and converts it into chemical energy chemical energy in the form of glucose, during which process? Come on, give me the name. During photosynthesis. Shabash. During photosynthesis. Okay. So again, usually the students, they only suffice by writing it does photosynthesis without telling all of this detail. traps light energy, converts it into chemical energy, forming glucose. This is very important. Okay, whenever you're talking about chloroplast and you're just sufficing yourself with writing that it does only photosynthesis, trust me, that's not good. Okay, so you need to know this. And also another thing, that maybe the last thing that you need to know about chloroplast is that it contains enzymes photosynthesis. Contains enzymes for photosynthesis. Okay, and of course some detail, well, you don't go into details of photosynthesis in O levels, the main reactions, but inshallah when we talk about plant nutrition, we'll talk about this slightly in more detail. Okay, and then a very important, cell wall. In some of the recent papers, there have been, I think, 7 or 8 mark questions that were basically asked to describe and explain what a cell membrane and a cell wall looked like. So again, all of these points that I'm mentioning, please make sure that you understand them and take note of them diligently, okay? All right, the first thing that we need to know about is the chemical composition. Cell wall is made of something which is known as cellulose. And just remember that cellulose is a carbohydrate, okay? In terms of class of food, it's a carbohydrate, and it's a tough material. It's a tough material, and since it's a tough material, it is also non-living, okay? Unlike the cell membrane, so it's non-living, and then it is thicker than the cell membrane. Okay? And then it is non-elastic. Remember, we talked about cell membrane on the top. We said for the cell membrane that it is, where did that point go? Yeah, we talked about it being extremely flexible, but clearly the cell wall is not elastic. Okay, and then very important, I'm changing the color of my ink just to reiterate the importance of this point, and that is that by nature this is freely permeable. Very important point, Bacho. Freely permeable. What does this mean? Who will tell me? I mean, everybody knows what semi-permeable means. It allows certain things to pass through and certain things not to pass through. What does freely permeable mean? Nayaz, you have been very quiet today. I wonder, I mean, yeah, can you tell me what freely permeable?
So it allows everything to pass through.
Excellent.
Pass through.
Exactly. So, you know, as I said, in case of the cell surface membrane, when you are writing that it is semi-permeable, you also have to qualify your answer with the correct explanation. That is, that it only allows certain things to pass through. Similarly, when you're talking about the cell wall, you need to tell that it basically allows, I mean, the explanation for this will be, it has no control over what enters the cell. No control over what enters or leaves the cell. All right, enters/leaves the cell. Isko aksar bache, they would rather call this thing as fully permeable. That's not a good word. The correct word is freely permeable. I'm highlighting that for you just so that you can understand the importance of that. Okay. All right. Then the cell wall is supposed to give the cell its shape, gives cell its shape, since it's a tough and rigid structure. And then also it maintains the turgor pressure. What's the turgor pressure? You know, the water I'm drawing these arrows that are pointing towards the inner side of the cell wall, okay? The water, once it's inside, it actually exerts this pressure on the inside of the cell wall, and you call this pressure as the turgor pressure. So if I were to define a turgor pressure, it would be the pressure. Let me write that down here for you. Let me bubble this. So turgor is the pressure that water exerts on the inner side of cell wall. Inshallah, we will be talking about this in detail also in plant transport. But I mean, I think it was important that we know all of this. And then finally, we have the cell vacuole. I'm going to use the top space to write cell vacuole. I hope I'm not mumbling and jumbling the notes. I'm trying to be as neat as I can so that when I give you this presentation at the end of the class, you know, it's easier for you. So everybody likes my handwriting? Come on, thodi tareef hi kar dein, please.
Yep, looks dope.
Okay, great. Yeah, I mean, how good is this? Zabardasti ki tareef, huh? Okay, but never mind. Okay, great. Purple. So we're left with cell vacuole. So vacuole is basically, you can call it a cell vacuole or simply vacuole. A vacuole is basic, it contains a fluid that is known as cell sap. Okay, and cell sap is basically made up of, majority of it is made up of water and sucrose. I think that's all about you need to know about the cell vacuole. Okay, and yeah, that's about it. And by the way, there's one more thing that I think tonoplast is not in our syllabus. We should not go in that detail. Okay, so 1, 2, and 3 organelles as far as the plant cell is concerned. TKZ, I hope everybody is so far so good. So all of the points that I've made you write are important technical points I've taken from all of the different marking schemes. Nothing more than what I have said is required. You can take that as a word, okay? So you don't need to go into more details. Stuff like Golgi bodies. If you find this thing in your textbooks, it does not, you have to understand, everything that you see in your textbook, Bacho, is not supposed to be memorized by you. So how do you keep a track? Well, that's why you have the syllabus in the first place, okay? Aage chale? Should we proceed? Yes? Okay, great. All right, now I'm going to journey you through different pictures that will reinforce what animal cells and plant cells they look like, excuse me. So if you look at this picture, this is an animated version of what is known as a plant cell. So clearly you can see the cytoplasm. The chloroplast, well, it does not look green in color since it's an animated picture. You have the cell membrane, you have the vacuole, you have the nucleus, and you have the cell wall. So if you get a diagram in the exam, you should be capable of labeling all of what you can see on the screen. The diagram on the left-hand side is a low magnification diagram. You can't see all of the nuclei and stuff, but that's how it is. Again, that's another picture reinforcing what a plant, typical leaf plant cell would look like. You can see that's the cell wall. The green thingies are the chloroplasts. And you've seen majority of the cell area is occupied by the vacuole. This yellow thingy is the cytoplasm. And then this orange thingy is the nucleus. They've labeled nuclear membrane, but I think we can clearly ignore that. Okay. Now, this is very important. Usually, since we are looking at diagrams that are two-dimensional, where say I deliberately showed you diagrams that were three-dimensional. This is one of the reasons I showed you this diagram. But nevertheless, you need to understand that cells are three-dimensional, okay? I mean, if I cut them in a half, that's how they would appear, okay? So you need to make sense of this. Let's look at this diagram and see what do I mean when I say that a cell is three-dimensional. Look at this picture. You know, literally, this cell is just like a cylinder. If you cut it in half in a longitudinal, and by the way, when I say longitudinal section, that's the direction of cut you make, okay? Literally from top to bottom. So, and then if you make a cut in this direction, that's from left to right, that's known as the transverse section. So what I've drawn on my screen, this is a longitudinal section, okay? You don't need to worry much about the sections, honestly, but I just want you to appreciate how this would look in three-dimensional, okay? So clearly you can see the cell wall. They've deliberately taken out this piece of cell wall to show that right on the inside of the cell wall, you have the cell surface membrane. Then you can clearly see the cytoplasm, and then you can see the vacuole in the middle. And then, of course, there's this nucleus, okay? Again, another animated diagram of a plant cell. Look at the cell wall. That's the cell wall. Then the vacuole in the middle, that's the vacuole. We know that the vacuole is a fluid-filled thing. That fluid is known as the cell sap. You have the chloroplast, the cytoplasm, the nucleus, and the cell membrane. I hope, I mean, honestly, if I were to give you, is everybody confident that if I give you a diagram of an animal cell and a plant cell for labeling, you will be able to do it comfortably? I mean, honestly, that should be a yes. And it's okay if it's a no for anybody. क्या ख्याल है बच्चों? Do you agree?
Yes.
Yes.
Sir.
चलें जी, अच्छी बात है. Okay. Again, a very simple diagram of an animal cell: cytoplasm, nucleus, cell membrane, mitochondria, end of story. I mean, honestly, nothing more you need to know. Now, again, this is a comparative diagram. So the things that have been labeled in blue, the following things, are the things that are common to the plant and the animal cells. You have the nucleus, you have the cytoplasm in both of them, and you have the cell membrane. What stands out are the following three things: chloroplast, it's only specific to plant cells; vacuole, only specific to plant cells; and cell wall, only specific to plant cells. Okay. This is just a table that is, again, explaining the same idea that I did. So inshallah, you can go through this yourself. Now, this is a diagram that I have myself have made. It's a Venn diagram that explains the similarities and differences between the plants and the animal cells. Let's look at the similarities first. So we agree that both of them have the cell membranes, both of them have cytoplasm, both of them have nucleus, and both of them have the mitochondria. Whereas the plant cell wall is present, chloroplast is present, sap vacuole or cell vacuole is present, comparatively larger. This is an important point. I didn't mention this. My apologies. The plant cell generally is bigger than the animal cell, and the nucleus is usually on the side. Whereas the animal cell, there's no cell wall, no chloroplast, no sap vacuole, comparatively smaller, and the nucleus tends to be somewhere in the center. Okay. Now, the following diagrams, what is this? Who will tell me what is this? What is this diagram called? It's okay if your answer is incorrect. Try, at least you can try. Otherwise, I will pick and choose. Come on, who will volunteer? Who will tell me what is this?
Plant cell?
Well, not plant cell. Asal I'm not asking that is it a plant cell or an animal cell. You know, this is a picture that has been taken, from microscope. I mean, I'm sure that you understand that this is a real picture. And such a picture is known as a
Photomicrograph.
Micrograph, shabash. It's known as a photomicrograph. And this is a typical animal cell. This is a picture of cheek cells. Look at this one. In the exam, it is expected that you may also get photomicrographs and you have to label. So if I were to look at the cell on the top right side, you can clearly see that's the nucleus. Okay, you can clearly see that's the cell membrane, and you can clearly see that this portion is the cytoplasm. Okay. So the reason I'm showing you this diagram is because it is expected of you in the exam to look at the photomicrographs and then label. Look at this. Again, that's a cheek cell. Clearly, you can see the cytoplasm, the nucleus, and the cell membrane labeled. Okay. Again, this is a photomicrograph of a plant cell. This is by the way, this is a slide of onion cells. The nucleus is not that prominent. You know, by the way, the cells are not colored. The reason why you see them as orange is because we've added a stain. So again, that's a nucleus that we can clearly see. And then in the middle, you can see the cytoplasm. And then look how this diagram stands out. Clearly, you can see this entire thickening. So this entire, that's common for all of the boundaries. This thing is known as the cell wall. Okay, that's the cell wall. All right, again, another photomicrograph. You can see these are also plant cells. That's the nucleus, that's the cytoplasm, and again, the cell wall. This is also a photomicrograph taken from leaf cells. All of these, can you see these green thingies? Can you tell me what these green thingies are all about? What are these green things?
Chloroplast?
Chloroplast.
Chloroplast, shabash. And they have their typical original color, which is the green color. Okay. Challenges. So basically now, so far, what we have done is, let me quickly summarize what we've done today. We started off with a very basic idea of what cell is all about. TK, I gave you this analogy of the school. By the way, the school analogy really fits into the cell analogy, but again, I didn't want you to go in that detail. So we talked about some basic points of cell, what they're supposed to be. And then we talked about this thing. levels of organization. Inshallah, that's the last thing I think I'm going to talk about. I'm going to jump the gun and I'm going to talk about them because we still have 10 minutes. Animal cells. Okay, let's look at this diagram. We didn't talk about this diagram, so you can clearly see that's the, excuse me, that's the nucleus. That's the cell membrane, that's the cytoplasm, the mitochondria looks very small, but that's how it is. Some of the cells may have granules. I haven't talked about this, but trust me, the stuff that I haven't talked about, I deliberately put this diagram. You can clearly see the rough endoplasmic reticulum. It's not in our syllabus. Smooth endoplasmic and nuclear pores and all of that. You don't need to know this detail. The mitochondria, nucleus, cell membrane, cytoplasm is sufficient. And by the way, when I'm saying that you don't need to know this, where am I taking this from? I'm taking this from your syllabus. Okay, your syllabus categorically says what you need to know. And then we went on into details of looking at different functions for different parts for animal cells. And then we looked at different diagrams. And then we talked about organelles of the plant cells and so on and so forth. And again, we looked at different pictures for reinforcing the idea. Again, this picture is very important because it shows you the three-dimensional nature of what a cell would look like. Again, some reinforcements. And then finally, we went on to some photomicrographs for both the plants and the animal cells. Now, the next thing, I'm not going to start with specialized cells. I'm just going to give you a bird's eye view what they are. And inshallah, in our next class, that is, what's the date today? We have our class to aaj kya hai? Wednesday. hai. We have our class now on, yes, Anika.
सर प्लीज आप वैक्यूल के फंक्शन के बारे में बता देंगे?
Vacuole ka function. Okay. Acha, Anika, there's one thing I want you to understand. Whenever you have a question, just unmute your mic and go ahead and ask the question because there are less chances that I will see that hand raised. Vacuole, the reason I didn't go into details of the function of vacuole is because inshallah, when we will talk about diffusion and osmosis in our second topic, I'm going to talk about that in detail because it's there when we talk about plasmolysis and turgidity, okay? So I deliberately didn't go into that detail, okay? So don't worry about that. We will talk about that in topic 2, but I appreciate that you've asked that question. Okay, now specialized cells, as it's obvious from the name, they're specialized for specialized functions. You don't need to remember all of the following specialized cells that you can see on the picture. The reason I have them on my slides is just so that you can have an idea. So like, for example, you have fat cells, which are specialized to store fat. I'm sure all of you hate these cells because once they're easy to get on, but they're difficult to get rid of. Kya khayal hai? Would everybody agree?
Sir.
Okay, great. अच्छा जी, वो एक कहावत है कि पेट बाहर आ जाए आना बहुत easy है, but it's very difficult to make your tummy go back inside. Anyhow, so you have the cartilage cell, you have the muscle cell, which is specialized for contraction. Then you have white blood cell, which is fighting, which is basically a very strong part of your immune system. And I don't, of course, need to go into details of what immune system is. COVID has, added to your information about immune system generally so much. Then you have the nerve cell, which carries the nerve impulses, the bone cell, the muscle cell, the epithelial cell, and the liver cell. The specialized cells that we are going to talk about are red blood cells and root hair cells and epithelial cells. These are the three basic specialized cells that we are going to talk about, inshallah, finally concluding with the tissue, which is xylem. And then, inshallah, we will talk about this levels of organization, okay? So I think I will, okay, let me convert this into PDF first. All right, Bacho, any questions we have for today's lesson? I would honestly really appreciate if you have any concerns also. I mean, I would want to take your feedback individually, what you had thought the lesson would be about, and how do you think you perceive the lesson? Do you think, and how do you think you will go ahead and proceed with doing all of the stuff? Because, you have to understand, okay, ji, this is cells. आज क्या date हो गई है? It is 2nd of December 2020. Sorry, यानी और आज क्या है जी वेडनेसडे है all right so inshallah I'm going to share these notes right away ये प्रिंट हो जाएंगे इंशाल्लाह अच्छा जी in the meanwhile quickly individually अगर मैं आपका नाम ले लेके आपसे पूछूं Anika what are your expectations from this crash course or I mean you have some expectations right so I just want to know and so that the others can also know I mean what expectations do you have and I mean one by one Anika कि आपको नहीं पता you want to think about it what do you think what are your expectations with this course
Sir, it helped me कि कौन सी चीजों को याद करना है और कौन सी फजूल चीजें जिन्हें नहीं करनी
फजूल चीजें I really like the choice of your word शाबाश अनीका आप confident हैं इस बात को बोलने में कि there are things that are फजूल चले I appreciate फातिमा जी आप तो जरूर बताएंगे because you were the one who pushed me actually I was never in the mood to do this yes फातिमा अच्छा मुझे ये
Sir,
बताइए did you understand today's lesson do you think it made sense and the specific content that you need to know and the stuff that you don't need to know do you think that helped
yes, sir.
both Hadia Qayyum and Hadia Tawqir anything that you didn't understand
Nope.
okay ये nope से मैं क्या समझूं कुछ समझ में नहीं आया कि सब समझ में आया
सब आ गया.
सब आ गया चलें
I
अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह
guess.
that is great that is great Haika you have not been in my class last year so I would really want to have an opinion and idea what is your feedback मैं ये नहीं कह रहा कि आप मेरी तारीफें ही करें you have to be constructive okay I need to know what were your expectations and what benefit did you get from today's class so that I can make sure that I make it more productive yes Haika
सर मुझे कुछ पॉइंट्स है जो क्लियर नहीं थे तो मुझे समझ आ रही है इससे
चलें अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह
और
okay चलें that is wonderful
और मुझे-
Inshal any
जी
comments
सर सर समझ आ रही है सारा
okay चलें alhamdulillah that is good Nayaz any input from your side
Yeah,
Is
I got
there-
all of it.
is there any love that I've been able to instill for biology in today's class
Yep, it was pretty nice. Showed a lot of nice diagrams. Kind of got
Okay,
everything a little bit
chale
better.
chale at least the diagrams help in aiding or adding love to the
drawings.
subject chale ji theek hai ji bachcho thank you jazakumullah khairan I really appreciate that you've taken out time and honestly if you have taken out time then there's one thing that I expect from you people don't pile up work do stuff according to your deadlines and please remember all of the things that I talked about yesterday they are very important that was not just for the sake of introduction that's really important and you have to understand theek hai ji any other questions that we have for today's lesson or any other general questions that you want to ask
I have a question.
yes
Can I
ma'am.
just print these instead of like writing them?
Well, it's up to you. I mean, I would encourage that you read them, you write them. But I mean, at the end of the day, if you want to print them out, I have no issues. I mean, honestly, like I would strongly encourage. If you're not writing stuff, you will be at disadvantage. Trust me on this. I mean,
Yeah.
go ahead and print it out. I have no issues. But you ask an opinion. I'm being very honest. Okay.
So I should try writing them.
Yeah, please do.
Alright.
Chale ji, jazakallah khair bachcho. Inshallah, we will now continue from Monday. Inshallah, Monday ko I think inshallah, hopefully we will be able to cover the first topic, including some of the past paper questions. अपना बहुत ख्याल रखें. We will stay lively in our group inshallah. कोशिश किया करें जब भी मैं ग्रुप पे कोई भी मैसेज करूं, so you do reply. Niaz, do you comprehend Urdu?
A little bit.
Okay, great. Chale ji, thank you bachcho. It was wonderful having you. अपना बहुत ख्याल रखें. See you on Monday inshallah. अपना बहुत ख्याल रखें. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.